Good day, Sentinels. Hello again. Welcome back for another webinar on, this time on AI-powered SIEM, unifying operations, hunting, and response. I'll give everyone a minute or two, and we will get started. Today we'll be talking about all the fun stuff. We'll be talking about SOC, threat hunting, and incident response. Of course, SIEM, the evolution of SIEM, and all of that good stuff. All right, 10 or 15 more seconds as people pile in here. All right, I guess let's get started. So today we're going to be talking about SIEM because people aren't talking about it enough nowadays. The evolution of it, right? And as well as the SOC and the evolution of the SOC and the fact that our goal is clearly automation and autonomy when it comes to security operations, but not just operations, but a unified framework that also takes into consideration hunting and incident response and what that practice looks like today, and hopefully how we can usher in the new kind of next generation of tools, of technologies, of getting our platform to a place where it enables operations in as automated a fashion as possible, right? So, indulge me in just 2 minutes of speaking to the evolution of SIEM, right? Security information and event management. It all started with centralized logging 20 plus years ago, right? I was there when we didn't know what to call this industry. SIM, SEM, what is it? Is it just centralized logging? What are we going to do with these logs? Well, it's endless what we can do with these logs. Well, sure, it is endless, but to allow the technology to get to a place where we can actually do something useful with these logs other than just put them in a centralized location, we needed to evolve the platforms, the tools, and the methods that we use to leverage these logs, right? So we aggregate the logs, we correlate them, correlate the logs, automate our responses. SIEM came about from the idea that we can automate responses and we can orchestrate actions based on the logs and the events, ultimately the telemetry nowadays, that we can get from all of these event data in one place, right? The threat intelligence that we can add to that, the context that we can add to that, that gives us the ability to be more intelligent about what is the next course of action when it comes to events that are happening across our environment, right? Understand the behaviors of things. Now we can actually talk to our SIEM in natural language, right? That is something probably, 20 years ago would have been far-fetched, but the goals haven't changed, and we'll discuss how the goals haven't changed, right? Agentic AI is where we're going towards our journey into autonomy, right? And we'll talk about that, right? We've gone to a place where, extended detection and response is happening not just at the endpoint, but across all log formats and sources, right? We're storing unstructured logs and data, just all kinds of data, in data lakes, and we're able to query them. We can even query stuff nowadays where it lives with certain tools and methods and technologies. So a federated and distributed way, both federated and distributed way of logging and of searching those logs is where we're headed, right? It's where we're evolving to, and it's what we need to discuss as the clear goal so that we can understand what is table stakes today and we can take it to the next level, right? So that's kind of the idea, setting the stage right? What is our operational reality today, right? So I've been here for a couple years now, a little more, and for a decade prior to that, I was running security engineering and operations at a large entertainment company, media and entertainment company. Prior to that, I ran an MSSP and a SOC, right? I had my own startup. All the while, we had security engineers, we had security analysts. Within the SOC, we had L1, 2, and 3s. We had threat hunters. We had incident response. Incident response was not the SOC, is not the SOC, still is not, right? So security teams do wear many hats. The one who's implementing or configuring a firewall is not the one that's monitoring the EDR events, is not the one that's threat hunting, and is not the one that's responding to a breach. Yes, they all supporting cast, certainly when it's an all-hand situation. But the day-to-day operations is very much a specialized kind of thing, right? So there are manual workflows that create inefficiencies, especially when dealing with responsibilities that fall under different teams, different managers, certainly. We know threat actors are growing more sophisticated. And, these tasks, a lot of time, incident response is disconnected from investigation. Threat hunting activity is disconnected from detection engineering, which really it should all be a chain of events, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about unifying these operations. It's kind of like the holy grail. Now, I understand that just like, in whoever caught my webinar last month, right, saw the whole autonomous SOC is a pipe dream statements that are coming from analysts, and my big, purple X across it saying, we very much do believe that an autonomous SOC is not only within our grasp, but the level of autonomy is going to be different for every organization and for even many tasks within the same organization, right? It's a matter of looking at what you have today, figuring out where you can integrate these AI capabilities, both generative, LLMs, agentic, machine learning, behavioral, right? All of these different layers where you can benefit from the automation of and the predictive analysis of our AI capabilities today, right? So we have our people, we have kind of our different hats. Each one of them perform a different function. We have different technology, right? We have SIEM, we have SOAR, we have EDR and XDR. Threat intelligence gives us context to all of that. Some SOAR tools come with their own case management capabilities, but usually we use a tool more like Jira or ServiceNow, for things that are going to be documenting cases. So these technologies obviously are, depends who you talk to, could be a dozen, could be several dozen different platforms that do different things. And then these processes, of course, live in different places as well. What frameworks we follow depends on what industry we're in, right? What IR procedures do we have crisis communication involved with our incident response? Do we have illegal immediately informed, or does it have to get to a certain severity, or does it have to impact a certain amount of customers or systems before legal or finance gets involved? These things all vary within industry and within each organization, right? And that's the SOC of today that we're talking about. But the SOC of today is not living at the speed that we are living, right? We as a race, certainly in the US and in many other countries, last month's CyberArms AI race presentation spoke about the capabilities coming from China and the UK and Russia and all of these other state actors. We are all living at the speed of AI. These videos were too big to kind of animate here. That being said, when it comes to education, right, we are seeing the best results in students that are actually trained at the individual level. So take, a dozen or a couple dozen fourth graders. When they are taught at an customized individual level, they make more progress. when you're teaching, when you are one human teacher teaching 24, 25 fourth graders at the same level, some may be at a higher level, at a more advanced level. Therefore, they're not really learning anything. Others may be at a far lower or less advanced level, and therefore it may be too complex of a lesson for them. Therefore, they are not learning much. And then you have, some in the middle that do actually get the most out of that particular lesson. If instead we can teach everyone at their own pace and have them interacting with potentially historical figures, medical experts, scientists, political heroes, all of these things actually get these individuals further along in their education than they would otherwise innate. And then, of course, for the rest of the time, we want to focus on real world stuff, right? We want to get them out there playing in the playground, getting dirty, getting messy. These are things that help you live in the future that we are living at and at the speed that we're living at today. We know healthcare operations with robotics and laser surgeries, these are commonplace. They happen daily already in all types of environments. We see that in the finance world, banks are leveraging robo-advisors to engage with a range of interactions, right? Directly with customers as well, right? So not to mention the advances in fraud and alerting and just anomaly detection that's being advanced in the financial space. And I don't know, I imagine there must be some people here that were at RSA a couple of weeks ago in San Francisco. So, I consider myself someone that's pretty advanced when it comes to understanding technology and where we're at today in this world. But it was pretty cool downtown San Francisco when you had, half the cars on the road were autonomous vehicles, right? It seems like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, this was very much a groundbreaking type of situation. But now we have long haul trucks going across state lines, hauling stuff without anyone in the vehicle. We have, basically essentially an Uber service downtown San Francisco, entire city being powered on autonomous vehicles. So it was pretty cool to experience that. And it's something that we need to understand that brings a sense of urgency of us in security, in the cybersecurity realm, to be able to leverage these technologies that almost every industry that you can look at or point to is leveraging today. So AI is the only way to keep up with the pace of threats, right? It's difficult to argue that point. I understand in the moment that AI is most saturated and no one, and everyone's like, oh, another AI. Well, this is the world we live in. And yeah, I figured, you know what? I'm going to double down and do an entire webinar on why this is happening. And this is something that is a must adopt for cybersecurity, right? Because falling behind in AI does mean getting outpaced by threat actors. We are in an arms race every day, not just in a developing new AI tools, but in understanding how to implement and leverage this. There are probably already too many tools out there doing some sort of artificial intelligence, whether, at whatever level, and with any data science techniques they may be using, that we already, as a private and public, certainly public, but private industry, have not been able to leverage or implement as we could, to the extent that we can today already, right? And understanding that these tools are already out there. We are doing a lot at SentinelOne. A lot of other tools and technologies and industries are doing a lot. And it is incumbent upon us as a cybersecurity community and to embrace and implement these tools as best we can to get the most value out of them, right? So understand kind of when we talk about AI, is it overhyped? Absolutely, 100%. It is overhyped. Is it a game changer? Absolutely, 100%. It is a game changer, right? So, just all the processes that data, other processes and data at machine speed moving across the ether is more than it's ever been before. It's growing. It's growing exponentially every year, right? And we need to be able to analyze these events. Can human analyze them? No, of course not. Not now. In fact, for decades, we have not been able to analyze the amount of data being generated by systems that is potentially useful for security. This has already been a problem for decades, right? Which is why databases were, this is why we shoved all our logs in a relational database 20 years ago, is to figure out what was happening, right? So this is something that we are already, the speed and scale has been a constant struggle. It's the reason for the cloud 15 years ago, right? So another thing we can't potentially even aspire to do as humans is the pattern recognition and prediction possible by these AI algorithms, right? When you implement this, you can create things that continuously learn, that detect anomalies, across massive amounts of data, that amplify, allow you to threat hunt in an adaptive way, amplify human intelligence, right? Humans are not great at figuring out what's happening with a million data points in a very short amount of time. But once that conclusion has been reached or that information has been summarized, humans can basically instantaneously decide what they want to do with that information, right? And have some reasoning behind why they chose to do it. Of course, human decisions, just like you can agree with them or you can not agree with them, everyone comes to a different conclusion or decision. And ultimately, this is not to say that every human decision is better than an AI decision because, but at least you have someone to blame, right? You can't just blame the machine. There needs to be human accountability in the decisions that we don't yet trust our AI platform to deliver for us. And all of these decisions continue to evolve. So, right, 20 years ago, when I first entered as a SOC analyst, or I first started dealing with security logs, the goal was very simple: automate everything, right? We did not have, hyper automation, store tools. We had scripts that we created that were kicked off by actions with it that had to be, configured to kick off these. And that's where these manual playbooks started happening. And then we started creating the SOAR playbooks, etc. And this all came from a very simple goal: automate everything, right? Well, today, AI does bring us closer than ever before to being able to automate everything. When it comes to certainly level one, what we understand to be L1 security operations, within a SOC, but a whole lot more than that as well, right? And the mentality has shifted. I feel like it's already, if you're already talking about rule sets to configure things, then you can see how that is 100% determinant on us, the engineers, the analysts, the humans that configure these systems, right? But when you have systems that understand what is happening and they improve themselves, right? That is something that now, today, we are expecting from a platform, certainly a cybersecurity platform. We should be expecting it from a cybersecurity platform today. And, will the SOC be fully autonomous ever? Listen, depends how far you want to automate what you're doing and what you're putting in what it means to be a SOC. Certainly, events and incidents can be resolved from beginning to end 100% autonomously today. Does it take maybe a few tools to do it? Does it take some cost, both in engaging some commercial tools and also paying some high-end engineers to put this together? Sure. But is it absolutely possible today to fully automate over 90% of level 1 SOC tasks, investigation, triage? Yes, 100%. It's possible. So, what is this SOC of the future you speak of, right? What are the characteristics that take us from what we've been doing to what we need to be doing that is going to allow us to make the most of AI as a catalyst to transform our security operations, right? We feel that agentic AI is a big part of that. It's not just the human reasoning, input and output, and guided threat hunting, and potentially reporting summarization that we've integrated into our platform that is going to take the entire SOC to the next level. That certainly augments the analyst. However, once this reasoning starts opening and closing tasks by itself with security agents, basically just integrations and tools that integrate other tools and allow you to perform actions in a way that makes sense and are then explained to the human analyst, that starts becoming true autonomy, or starts feeling more like autonomy. And we will talk about that spectrum, right? For a long time now, visualization hasn't really changed. This is potentially a part of what the SOC as we know it today needs to drastically overhaul, is the way that they perform attack simulations, the way they see the events and criticality and how things are happening, these real world attack scenarios. Do we use augmented reality to give us better visuals of attack paths, or are we still looking at donuts and, pie charts and bar graphs? Like, I feel like it's time that the donuts and the and the pie charts and the bar graphs are long overdue for some visualization AI. Can we not do better in this area, right? Autonomous hunting, dynamic and automatic creation of detection rules, right? IOCs, threat feeds are coming in, threat intelligence is happening, threat hunting is happening based on this intelligence, right? Something gets identified, a detection gets created, and then starts pushing out to the entire environment. And this cycle continues to feed itself so that autonomy is happening. Of course, zero trust is another one of those holy grails, like autonomous SOC. It's a spectrum, right? I feel that certainly we will and can and should be striving for the opportunity to authenticate every identity and object on access every time, an object or an object interact, or an identity and an object interact, right? With context, with more context. Who is this person? This IP address, where are they located in the world? Are there any threats, actors that are relevant in this area? When this is happening on every transaction, we'll get to a better place. Will we ever get there? Again, a spectrum, but certainly worthy of a long-term strategic future plan for, right? Federated data, right? Data is being generated everywhere. How do we best access this data, where it is, and where do we best get the right data into the proper repository along with all the rest of the data that needs to be in the same place to perform a particular function. That function could be security, could be any number of functions, compliance, governance. There are a lot of reasons why you may want a particular business intelligence, right? Observability requirements. There's different types of data that you want in the same place and has a similar characteristic. I query it often. It is important and very relevant for real-time monitoring, or maybe it's not. Maybe this is all data for back-end reporting and for auditors, and it doesn't have to be always available and monitored real-time. So all of these considerations are being made today by people. Given the proper intelligence, right, we should be able to determine a class for the data that we're seeing and where it should go. And really, just because of the elasticity and the nature of the requirements, I don't see how a cloud native SOC is not what necessarily has to be. This is not to say that you're not monitoring systems on-prem, in hybrid environments, private, public, etc., but certainly your cloud, your SOC platform really should have the resiliency, elasticity, and support of the cloud and be powered by the cloud and not be necessarily dependent on a particular region or data center or handful of servers, right? So part of the maturity model, and I'll probably not spend too much time on this because ultimately I'm sure you've heard me go over this in more than one way, and other people talk to this model. But again, our processes are maturing with the same North Star of automate everything, along with our capabilities when it comes to technology, platform, process, and people, right? So listen, 20 years ago, you wrote a new preprocessor for Snort, and now you were detecting not just one attack, but we were detecting a whole class of attacks, right? And so this was, the writing of the Snort preprocessor was a manual task with some detection logic in it, right? That hopefully automated detection of that based on, in that case, packets that back then weren't encrypted running on the wire, right? So we would create these detections manually. We moved on to, extensive multi-source rules-based type correlation, right? Some SOAR systems that allowed us to orchestrate and automate a lot of these responses. A couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, okay, this generative AI thing has really changed the game for our analysts, right? We need to leverage this in an integrated fashion with our security platforms. And we introduced the capabilities to not only have machine learning algorithms at the endpoint, which really is about, we're about a decade into that capability. And now we're giving that generative AI capability assistance, right, within the security platform itself to build queries, to accelerate our responses, to give us some guide into what the next steps in these hunts and these investigations are. Today and in the immediate future, we are leveraging these tools to deliver more automated ways of performing these functions that we've been performing manually for a long time: detection, triage, analysis, investigation, right? These are now becoming a supervisory role for the human, and AI is doing a lot of the sausage making for us in a lot of these types of ways, and that's going to continue to mature. Now, to what extent we will have full autonomy, when you have several, maybe several hundred security agents configured to do different reasoning and action tasks that accomplish the automation of a particular area of need. So when talking about the SOC, let's say monitoring, right? Or let's say triage. If you have a triage of this environment, let's call it your cloud, right? So I've onboarded my entire cloud. I have full agentic access, API access across the board. And these threats are being auto-remediated, auto-responded to, auto-investigated. And pretty much it's on cruise control. That now allows the human to guide that system into further autonomy and further integration into other systems, right? So when is that going to happen? Well, depends on how you define the scope of the task that you're trying to accomplish, right? And that could potentially happen in a subset or in a small domain rather quickly and rather feasibly, right? And we've seen this shift. And so you got me. I used this slide last month, but I feel like this is the one slide, right, that talks about this shift, right? And we're talking about the shift of using general purpose models from trusted partner. Okay, a shift that has also evolved and continues to use and augment their reasoning by adding these systems, right? These capabilities. We've added proprietary models with more contextual awareness, right? So not only are we leveraging the ChatGPTs of the world, but we're also building our own knowledge base, adding our own data and intelligence, and grounded with prompts that allow you to define how output is arrived at, right? And then now adding agents in a way that can automate the standard activity, or at least give you recommendations on how to automate, and then you choose. Do you want to automate this and never have to do it again yourself or not? And these are things, or you don't trust the AI sufficiently to automate that yet, right? And that's where the question of full autonomy comes in. It's basically just a question of just how much do we trust this agentic approach, this platform, to perform the task in question, right? So we'll go over this rather briefly again. I said that, the spectrum situation, there's a lot of different types of agentic approaches, right? These are three there's dozens. It depends what research paper you look at. These felt relevant because you can see how React, right, reasoning and action with retrieval augmented, RAG, right, architecture, grounded in some kind of intelligence, gives you a good cybersecurity focused model or capability for the task at hand, which is automating your SOC, right? Automating everything. That's the goal here in cybersecurity. We understand it needs to be tool enhanced, right? So, no one tool is going to do it alone, right? So you need to have the capability to leverage different workflows, multiple tools, multiple APIs, and access them all from the same AI platform. And you need something that learns, right? Because we're not just maintaining operations when it comes to cybersecurity. We're investigating novel attacks all the time, right? So it needs to learn from what just happened so it can detect what's going to happen next. And so the spectrum, it's the more agentic capability you put into your model, right, the more autonomy your operations are going to have. Right. So less agentic, we're already there, right? Summarize this alert, take a pattern and describe it, give me detection code, give me a query, right? Give me some examples of incidents and vulnerabilities where this has happened. We are there, right? It's going out, it's getting this information, it's coming back. More agentic is it getting threat intelligence from a threat feed and the data sources, prototype, refine new detections, perform this active threat hunting, proactive threat hunting for us. That's more agentic, and that's coming very soon, right? And so AI being the game changer, right, is having it really in your DNA, right? And in every level of your detection and response platform for hunting, for response, for IR, and for operations, right? From the agent to the platform. So to talk about these different areas, right? Building a unified framework, the interactions between human data and the system, how that needs to continue to augment to improve the system, right? Ideally, one system for triage, investigation, and hunting. Ideally, is that ever going to happen? Hopefully, right? At least within what you can control, right? It's not going to happen for the whole world. The whole world is not going to be on the same platform, right? But your organization can be. Your organization can standardize, right? And hopefully you can add AI reasoning into all of these areas in different ways, right? So this approach, I blogged about it. This was a big part of last year's kind of threat hunting reanalyzation, right? I worked closely with our threat hunting team, our Watchtower team, and there were some things that we felt were kind of table stakes. And if you were going to start a hunting program and you were going to do this in an effective way, there are certain aspects of hunting that you want to try to achieve as a guiding star, right? So chain detections. We want to be able to get an initial detection trigger from any sort of telemetry, log data, forensic artifacts. That's the goal, right? Analyze as much as you can and try to get an initial detection. Add some context to it, triage it automatically. Add some threat intelligence, correlate all of that data, right? Ideally, these are things that can and should be happening on a security platform already. We inevitably have some external tasks, some risk prioritization, some decision points that we need to make, right? The more your AI platform, your AI system has access to these external tasks, to understanding, okay, does this system have a vulnerability that is susceptible to the type of attack that it's undergoing, and what decision is the next decision point, you can receive a guided response. But you want this to be a chained feedback loop. You want it to be multi-directional in nature, and you want it to be AI powered also by nature, right? And response and orchestrating. Listen, SOAR is dead. SIEM is dead. AI is dead. Everything's dead. That's great. That being said, we still need all of it. We need SOAR, we need SIEM, we need AI, right? So let's bring them back to life and figure out what of it we can use and how to best leverage that, right? Orchestration and automation is not only needed, it's the goal. It's where we want to be, right? Not just for monitoring and for hunting, but also for incident response. Is that possible? Depends who you ask. Depends what environment you're walking into, right? I used to do IR as a professional service, walking into every customer. Every customer is a snowflake. What tools they have in their environment is a crapshoot. You never really know what you're walking into, right? But if you're running security for your own organization, you can absolutely standardize and understand how you're centralizing what security data and where. How am I going to be able to at least collect all the data I need for IR from the same platform or through a single platform? How am I, we're not going to wait till the end of the IR for lessons learned to then give a report to our SOC and our threat hunters to try for that to bring some value to them. No, we want incident responders and analysts and engineers to work the incident so that they end up in a better place after the incident, right? And ideally, we want to automatically anticipate what forensic data we will need to respond to an incident. And I'm not saying collect it all the time, but if you have the proper initial detection triggers out there, you should be able to turn that into actionable tasks to collect that data. So we're going to so I'll leave you, like, this is before last slide, two paths. This came from, I'll give a credit when we post the slides, but this is a book written by a pretty smart dude. And the idea, not me, but the idea is, and listen, I was actually just using this analogy with my family about a small home improvement project, right? We can transform what we have today, or we can optimize over time what we have today. There's two paths. We can choose one or the other. Path one would be transform the entire platform, right? The data platform, we integrate AI everywhere, automation first. We want it to be cloud native. We want to shift everything to a new way of operations. Path two is augment what we have today. Let's not rip and replace too much at once. Let's add what we can. Let's start a hunting program. Let's understand how we can consolidate and move to different platforms in a way that makes sense for operations, and begin to add some more cloud visibility and capability to our environment. That's going to take longer, but it's going to be less expensive and less invasive to daily operations. And it really depends on how, your CIO, CTO, CISO, and ultimately, are you in a technology company, or are you in kind of a risk-averse, more of a, industry that is less risky when it comes to transformational change or digital transformation, right? So that's going to depend up to you. And the idea really is to have this goal: ready, set, evolve, right? People-wise, you have your L3 analysts, there's threat modeling, of course there's managers, but you have AI and ML experts, and you have the cloud SOC analysts. The technology has transformed into including and integrating AI into most of your activity. Hyperautomation with reasoning to perform tasks that are performed by agents, not by people, and take threat intel into account, are able to learn from patterns, and as humans, we can give that expert-guided, decision-making to advance the system capabilities, not to respond to individual incidents ourselves. And that was a mouthful, and that was a lot. So honestly, from me to you, thank you so much for joining me today. I know everyone's time is valuable. I do appreciate the time, and hopefully, if you disagree with me, I encourage that. Give me your feedback. If you do agree with me, also, I'll take it. Feedback, questions, whatever you'd like. I appreciate everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Albert. You guys have a good one.